So, good morning, student. I have already discussed in my first lecture about the various important properties of nanomaterials. Now, in this lecture, basically I will concentrate on the thermodynamic, or you can call it thermal and mechanical properties of nanomaterials. Now, as you know that there are several models are available to predict and explain the mechanical properties of different types of nanomaterials. That means I am concerned about the metal nanoparticles, I am concerned about the nanorods or nanowires or whisper or even some oxide type of nanomaterials. But it is very difficult to understand the actual behavior of the mechanical properties. Suppose if I decrease the size of the nanomaterials, what would be the mechanical properties and like that. But somehow I am trying to collect some of the information about this mechanical properties of the nanomaterials from some books and literature, and I will try to explain the actual behavior of these two important properties. One is what about the melting points of this nanomaterial and about the mechanical properties. Now, as you know that whenever I start any topic, I must tell the students some of the important literature related to that subject. So, for preparing this small lectures, I have referred this review article that is only for the mechanical properties of nanomaterials. It is a review article, and it will give some of the important information about the role of strength, hardness, melting points, etc. And of course, just like your optical properties also, it is also, you can call it is a size dependent, because the properties of this nanomaterial is based on the, of course, the size. So that is a very important factor. Similarly, you can also refer this another article, that is nanoparticle classification, physico-chemical properties, example like that. And for fundamental knowledge, I will suggest my student that you must refer this book, Introduction to Inorganic Chemistry. Of course, it is a wiki book, Penn State University Libra text, and for this nanoparticle part, you must refer the chapter number 11, so that you can have some elementary idea about the nanomaterials and other things. And above all, some of the parts of my lecture is also based on this book, Nanostructures and Nanomaterials, Synthesis, Properties and Application by Professor Kallol. This book is available in your library, so you can refer this book for this purpose. Now let me start the first point of this mechanical properties, or the melting point. You all know that if I just compare with if I take a sphere, and the first point for any type of mechanical properties is that the most important property is that the surface area to volume ratio is very, very important. And as we decrease the size of this from suppose bulk to small nanomaterials, this ratio will be very high, and there is a general equation. You know that if the radius is r and area of sphere is 4 pi r square and volume of the sphere is 4 by 3 pi r cube, and you just calculate this thing, so you will get that 3r. So it is quite natural if you just decrease the size of this particle, that of course the value will be high. And depending upon this thing, that means one point is that the surface volume ratio, and another most important point, when we convert it into from bulk to nanomaterials, the number of surface atoms present on the per unit area, that is also very important. And therefore naturally surface energy is also plays a very important role, and for mechanical properties also, that this small crystal structure there is a less dislocation, imperfection, other things, so that is also play very significant roles for explaining the mechanical properties. So let me just tell you that this high surface area to volume ratio is an important factor in many of the physical properties of the nanomaterials. And because when there is a large number of atoms in this particular surface, the surface energy of the nanomaterials can have a major effect. A large fraction of the atoms in a nanoparticle on the surface. So that plays a very significant role for showing the melting points or other type of thermodynamic properties. Now it is a very common diagram, and everywhere you will get this type of diagram, that what is the fraction of surface atoms with respect to particle in a size, or what is the fraction of surface atom in the bulk. That in bulk case, that is the reverse type of the things. It will be just like reverse type of things. So what does it indicate? That when the particle size is less, the fraction of surface atom will be higher. So on the basis of this theory, I have also gone through another research paper, that is there really a size effect on the surface energy of the nanoparticles, and I have taken two graphs from this because they have done a lot of work related to the particle size, whether the metallic nanoparticle as a function of particle size and the temperature. Because you know that if you take the gold, the melting point is very high, but if I compare the melting point of bulk gold and a very small nanoparticle, there is a change in melting point. That is the results of this work, and I have again taking these two. They have done a lot of work using copper type of the nanoparticles. You see, first point is that number of fraction of the surface atom is high. Quite natural, if the fraction of the surface atom in the surface is high, naturally the surface energy will also be very high. So they have given these two calculated surface energies of copper type of cubo-octahedron type of copper particle. So you see that here, if you compare this surface energy, if the particle is high compared to if the particle size is 40. So one factor is that the number of surface atom. Number two, surface energy. Here is also you have seen that the surface energy is size dependent. So therefore, on the basis of this observation, we can predict the nature of the melting point, because you know that melting point of a material is an indicator of the bond strength of the material. So in bulk system, surface area to volume ratio is very small, but in nanocrystal, number of surface atom is a considerable fraction of the total number of atoms. So lowering the melting points is surface energy increases with a decrease in the size of the nanoparticles. And therefore, naturally, this implies that surface atoms are expected to melt below the melting point of the bulk. There are a large number of examples are available in the literature, and they are giving the melting point of different types of nanomaterials. Here I am giving only one or two examples of your things. It is also same type of curve that I am taken from this literature from study of the CSD process for the ordered decomposition of metallic nanocrystal. Same thing almost, percentage of atoms in the bulk. You see, it is just like a reverse case. Here you see, if the particle size is small, number is very high, whereas the bulk material just reverse case. Here you can see the bulk atom and the surface atom. Now this is actually general trends. I am taking these general trends that if I take the radius of the particle, like I can write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I am not giving any type of scale because it is a general type of gold type of nanomaterials. Trend showing the depression of the melting points in the gold nanoparticles. Melting point generally it is decreased. It is a general trend. It is not for gold or silver or anything. It is a general trend, I should say. Now I am giving you some example I have taken from the literature. So as I told you just a few minutes ago that the melting point of pure gold is 1064 degrees centigrade, and when you see the size is like 2.5 nanometer or like that, so it is just a drastic change in the melting point. So the surface to bulk atomic volume ratio is a significant contribution factor to the melting point depression observed in the gold and others. And I have taken this information from this research paper, the exact value of they have similarly such type of graphs for other nanoparticles are also available in the literature, but it is a general trend, you can call it like that. So naturally that there is the reduced binding energy per atom is one of the features in lowering the melting point with particle size, which can be explained. Now, yes, you understand the surface energy, you can explain about the number of surface atom, you can explain the surface area to volume ratio, but one of the reason for that the relationship between, because that melting point you can call it is a phase transition, it is a phase transformation type of the thing. And fortunately Gibbs and Thomson proposed the equation which will relate that phase transition temperature or melting point with the radius of it is inversely proportional. So, and there are various forms are available for the Gibbs-Thomson equation. So again I am taking this Gibbs-Thomson equation from literature. So I am just showing this equation to you, and I am taking this equation from this source, Journal of Chemical Physics, published in I think 2002. So it is actually Gibbs-Thomson, it is a phase transition type of things. Now you see there are two terms, one is that melting temperature and melting temperature of your nanomaterial species, and the second is this part is the melting temperature of the bulk. Now there are other factors are also there, like solid lipid interface energy, enthalpy of the fusion, density of the solids. There are so many factors, but you know that most important thing is that there is a relationship between the melting point and the radius. It is inversely proportional. So as radius as radius is slow, then as the radius is small, the delta Tm is decreased. So it is inversely proportional to things. And this R, that is a relationship between this delta Tm and x. As x is small, that this is inversely proportional like that. And I have also tried to see this equation, what are the other forms of the equation. So it is also, I have taken this a very important journal of physics, Pramana, Journal of Physics, written by a very senior scientist, K.K. Nanda, Material Research Center, Indian Institute of the Science, Bangalore. So this thermodynamic model first published in very long ago, 1909, is being an extensively to understand the size dependent melting of the nanoparticles. Paolo deduced an expression for the size dependent melting point of the small particle based on thermodynamic model. It is also a thermodynamic model. Then that is some modification, and that is also almost very similar to that Gibbs Thomson model. It is also a Gibbs Thomson model, but it is also again d is the diameter of the nanoparticle. Same thing where we have written the r, but here they are also taken surface energy of the solid vapor, and then this TCM, heat of fusion is, latent heat of fusion is also there. TCM is the bulk melting point temperature, and density is like that. Now I am giving one or two examples, like melting point of the bulk silver. Before that I have shown you the example of gold, that is 1064 degrees centigrade. Here is the bulk silver is 962 degrees centigrade, around 1235 Kelvin. So assuming that the entropy of fusion is the same as the bulk, and of course there is a drop in the melting point in like 700 degree centigrade. So change in the ratio of surface energy to volume energy as a function of particle size. That means if you know the Gibbs Thomson equation, you are able to calculate prediction about what would be the melting point. Now this again I am just showing because, as I told you, that there are a large number of studies are available regarding the melting point of the gold, silver, or any other types of composite nanomaterials and others. So, but sometimes what happens, it is very difficult to determine the melting temperature of the nanoparticles. The surface properties of nanoparticles are different from the bulk material, because the vapor pressure of a small particle is higher than the bulk material. So therefore, in my introductory part also I told you that it is very, very difficult. It is not like the optical properties. So whatever we are getting in the experiment, we are just showing, but it is confirmed that as we converted the bulk into the nanomaterials, the melting point is decreases. Now, what about the nanorods and nanowires? Because these are also nanomaterials. So when I search the literature and see some of the research papers, the trend is almost similar like for other nanomaterials. That means the melting temperature of nanorods and nanowires are also lower than the bulk materials. Like gold nanorods, there are so many examples. Melting point of the gallium is 930 degrees centigrade, but the melting point of gallium nanowires is 650 degrees centigrade. So natural, it is quite natural, the high surface energy and bonding between the constituents atom. So that is the reason for that. Now, one of the most important properties of the nanomaterials And nowadays, a large number of scientists are working on this self-purification of the nanomaterials. It is one of the most important technological application of the nanomaterials. That it is an intrinsic thermodynamic property, and automatically with the effect of the heat, the properties, there is a self-healing. I must tell you that heat treatment will increase the diffusion of impurities, intrinsic structural defects and dislocation, and very less crystal defects, and so inner impurities can easily be migrate the short distance to the surface and be ejected due to very little interior volume. That means in one sentence you can call that there is this dislocation and imperfections are very less in this small type of nanomaterials, and automatically there is a purification things. I will not discuss the application of this thing. There are a large number of technological applications nowadays. Now I am coming to the last part of this discussion, that is the mechanical properties of nanomaterials. In first part, I discuss about the melting point. Now the mechanical properties, there are many mechanical properties. Basically, first thing is that you want to know that what should be the strength of that nanomaterials. About this, their hardness, toughness, brittleness, plasticity, fatigue strength, elastic modulus, ductility, rigidity, and yield stress. Now, you are all chemistry students. Basically, most type of this mechanical properties have been studied by the engineers and other things. For different types of oxide nanomaterials, nanowires, nanorods, different types of the composite material. But here I will discuss some of the fundamental points of this strength and hardness. Now, mechanical properties of the materials increase with a decreasing size. That is one first point. And second point is that the external surface of the nanomaterials are have a less or free of defects compared to the bulk materials, serving to enhance the mechanical properties of the nanomaterials. So, in one sentence, you can call that in nanomaterials, the crystals are perfect. So, there is no defects. So, automatically the mechanical properties will be increased. Now, basically, you want to know about the strength of the nanowires. I am not discussing the carbon nanotube, strength of the carbon nanotubes or other types of nanowires and other things in comparison to steel and other things. But I will something about the whisker. It is also one type of nanocrystalline material with distinct crystal anisotropy of the properties. It is one type of nanofiber type of the things. But again, there is some conditions that yes, that mechanical strength increases, but the size of that nanowire or that whisker must be less than 10 micron. Again, the explanation is same, that high internal perfections, dislocation, imperfections are less, and smaller structure of nanorods, nanowires have less surface defects. Now, fortunately, how do you explain this hardness and the strength? Hardness and the yield stress. There are many models are available, but most of the scientists are using this very common model. This model or equation is called Hall and pitch relationship. And again, I told you that large number of advanced research is going on, but still we are rely on this equation, which was derived in 1950. And if you see very carefully this equation, you can explain this thing that according to this equation, suppose this is yield stress, sigma is yield stress, sigma 0 plus it is a constant divided by under root of d. D is suppose diameter or the size. So according to this equation, the yield stress and hardness increases with the decreasing size. So it is quite natural. Sigma 0 and H0 are constant related to the lattice fraction stress, and K is the material dependent constant. So this is a other type of relation. So in conclusion, this is the last part, that first it is very difficult to predict the actual strength, because various models have been developed to explain the size dependence of hardness and the strength of the nanomaterials, and because it is very difficult to reach a final conclusion, because it is not like optical properties. So because many factors are responsible for this prediction of the mechanical properties. But as a nutshell, you can say yes, when we decrease the size, the mechanical properties increases and like that. And if you ask me regarding the Young modulus or superplasticity and creep, so I am not getting any significant effect on this properties of the mechanical properties. So let me just conclude today in this short lecture. I have explained only two properties. One is, sometimes it is called the thermal properties or thermodynamic properties, that is what is the effect of melting point if we decrease from bulk to nanomaterial. Second, I have tried to explain the hardness and the strength of the nanomaterials. So in my last lecture, first I have discussed about the optical properties, this is about the mechanical properties, and the other remaining properties like electric property, conductivity, magnetic properties and other properties will be delivered in my last lecture of the physicochemical properties of the nanomaterial. Thank you very much.